Back at it on the micro.
We are back.
Tip.
Back. It is October 14th, people. For you, at least. 2021. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. It is podcast 521, and this is Crushing Iron.
Is it 2022?
Is it? It feels like it's 2022.
We're getting way out in front here.
No, we are. We're working ahead.
Be careful.
We are getting it done. We're doing what is required. We're taking a little bit of time off, so we're doing these ahead of time. We were just commenting a little before. I was like, we're probably going to be a little bit rusty coming back into it, but we'll find our groove. We hope you're having a nice groove at the end of your week. We appreciate you tuning in and giving us your time. It's your first time listening. We thank you. We know we have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and podcasts in general. So, hey, thanks for giving us your time. We cover it all. We cover swim, bike, run specific podcasts. We cover race recaps, race previews. We'll have on the very, very occasional guest. We oftentimes brew coffee, which you can hear in the background.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis Myers. And is that some of the, is that Angry Squid coming in?
No, it's not Angry Squid. It's Pale.
Pale Horse Dark Knight or something?
I think so. Pale Horse Dark Knight.
Pale Horse Dark Knight.
Shining Armor.
It sounds like a Netflix show or something. And as you can see, we oftentimes go off script and talk about life and coffee. Sometimes we'll go into our closed Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group. You can search that, answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. There's a whole lot of awesome people in there, from beginner triathletes or people just looking to get into triathlon, the sport in general, who have a lot of questions. Middle of the packers all the way up to Kona qualifiers, Ironman champions, and like I said, everyone in between. So there's a lot of wealth and knowledge in there. Go in there, ask your questions. You'll get a lot of great feedback. Don't be afraid to ask. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Because honestly, like if you've thought of it, someone else has thought of it too, and they might have asked. So you might be not just getting your question answered. You might get about 10 or 15 people's question answered that they've been kind of, fumbling their way through the interwebs, trying to figure out when you get 19 different answers about one simple common sense topic, which is what we're going to talk about today, which is running. I'm not here, both coaches and athletes ourselves. Oftentimes we'll kind of use what we're going through in life and in training as the topic of the conversation. Then we also work with a wide range of athletes across the globe. That always gives us a kind of a good, sensible idea of kind of the collective vibe of athletes in this time of year, whether it's racing or not racing. And we take that Seinfeld approach. We're just generic enough to be specific to you. And it's like, or the fortune cookie method. We're not experts. We're not professionals. We've just been doing this for a long time. We're experienced. We've worked with a lot of different athletes with a lot of different abilities that have had a lot of different life circumstances. That's like one of the most common things you and I get when like new athletes come in. They're like, all right, I've got this really weird schedule. It's probably something you've never seen before. And you're like, seen it. Like seeing it. Athletes got it. Like everyone has a crazy life and a crazy schedule. That's gone are the days where people did Monday through Friday 9 to 5s and going to the office. Those are just gone. So everything is different for every person, and that's what also makes a sport awesome, fun, and also frustrating for athletes. Is there's so much to consider. There's so much to kind of sift through. You got swimming, cycling, running. You got 3 different sports. You got to put them all together to make one. And do the triathlon. You got nutrition, you got transition, you got gear, you got how to not just how to train, but how to piece them all together on race day. And then you just combine that with that, the type A personality of never satisfied, always want to get better, and which again makes our job as coaches rewarding yet endless, because people kind of give themselves the 48-hour window of, I'm super happy, what's next? Or I really did great, but I really think I could shave off 38 seconds in, my bike time next year on the
T2 for sure.
Yeah, on the 116 mile course. But so that's it's complicated, but we have a lot of experience. We don't have our sponsors, and we don't have ads. We do have one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Oh yeah. So while you mentioned that, we have a lot of new gear up at the store.
We do.
That's the way we support this.
Sponsor
podcast.
us by.
Yeah, wearing the cool gear. It's awesome and comfortable. People really do wear it a lot, so they must like it.
They call it repping.
They repping.
Is from what I understand. People call it, I like to rep your gear.
Repping the gear.
Or I like to rep your swag.
People like to, but it's a good way to help us out and keep the podcast rolling.
Yeah, and you can
to your son. Yeah.
And you can wear your hat however you want to wear it.
Exactly.
Just curve the bill slightly. It's all I'm asking, okay?
A little bit.
Just at least. You don't have to have
Take a little edge off
yeah,
of it.
you don't have to put, like the rubber band around it and throw it in the top shelf of the dishwasher to get it like a little bit rusty and kind of get a nice little bend to it. But
man, that makes me want to break in a glove.
I know, right? Just give it a little bit of a
put it
bend.
in the oven.
Just put it in the oven. Grease it up, put the oven on 425 for 20 minutes.
And it'll be ready to turn double plays.
Exactly.
Speaking of which,
Ozzie Smith.
We're way ahead, but I actually dove into baseball a little bit last night.
Oh my God.
I know. Look, I was telling
you.
somebody, I like the game when it's played correctly, and usually in the playoffs they do it right. So for the most part, and how can you pass up a playoff game between the Yankees and the Red Sox? It's kind of.
I had zero idea.
I'm sure you did, but today would be a week ago or whatever, but. The Cardinals and the Dodgers played tonight in a playoff game.
Now that's also an old school classic rivalry. I grew up a big time Cardinals fan. I don't watch near as much baseball as I used to.
Yeah, I'm the same way, but I kind of like this. There's a couple good plays that kind of set me up. I was like, damn, a nice relay, got a guy at the plate. Those kind of sliding plays. I stopped watching it because of the replays and the launch angle and the speed of the pitch and the strike zone box.
Let me ask you
things like that. That's why I stopped. But I like the game. I love it still.
How many times have you stopped watching baseball?
I mean, a lot, man. I didn't watch any games this whole year, but last night I was kind of like, okay,
give it a whirl.
I can watch this for a little bit, and
that's how I was with the NBA. I was huge Lakers fan. Like back in the day, like way for the first poster I ever had.
Jerry West.
Not that old. Not that. Come on, dude. It's easy on me. The first ever poster I ever had was from 1985, Los Angeles Lakers. It had Kurt Rambis, Michael Cooper, Byron Scott.
Worthy.
Yeah, Worthy. Yep, Magic. It had it was like the team. And then obviously the Lakers were okay again. Then we got Kobe and we got Shaq. I mean, I would be all about NBA basketball. It's back when I used to stay up late. Because that's what you're forced to do when you got West Coast team. Like they don't come on until 9:00 Central. I mean, East Coast. That's why I'm long gone in basketball. But that's good. Find your way back to one of your old loves.
Yeah, and
gentlemen in the front row. You just raised your hand.
I had a point here. I actually have this concept I've been marinating on, and I think what we just were talking about maybe kind of sets it up, and it could set up the podcast actually. And my thought is the past is the future, and I think that. With all the technology and all the gadgets and all that kind of stuff, I think we're reaching a point where it's like, how much further can it go? It's not, you almost have to get back. And I think you're going to probably talk about this in this running podcast.
100%.
You kind of got to get back to the basics and do the work. And you can't be all gadgeted out and thinking about, doing fancy, like going to wherever the hell you go and do those tests with all the, nodes on your head and
you do them once a year and you get your zones. Like
let's just simplify life, man, and get back to the basics.
You brought up something that is so prominent in running, which we're going to talk about today. The last two podcasts we covered, we did our swim podcast and this kind of our micro goal, how to not suck the off season kind of series. We did swimming, and then we did cycling was our last podcast we did on Monday. This one's all about running, and one of the two of our most popular podcasts we've ever done is obviously the How to Not Suck at Swimming series, and then the How to Not Suck at Running series. I get a lot of feedback from athletes like that was really, really, really helpful, and we've seen people even post in our Facebook group like, "Hey, I took that kind of method you threw out there and used that, and I saw really, really, really good results from it." But what you said is so prominent in running because everyone now has gadgets, right? And running is like it's the same thing I feel about swimming. It's just pure. Like all you need to go swim is a set of goggles. That's it. And you don't need to stare at your watch. No one stares at their watch.
Mark Spitz, you don't even need those.
You don't even need those, right? It's like that's how it was still. And it had hair all over his chest and his arms. He'd probably look like an orangutan up on the blocks. Yet one of the best swimmers of all time. And running is the same. All you need is a pair of shoes. And you can do it. It's not like cycling where you got to have a bike, you got a helmet, you got to, like all these extra things, bike shoes. It's pure. And you said something about the future is the past or the past is the future, something like that. But the past few years, and this was like, this phrase was made very, 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 very popular by the Sky team in the Tour de France, which was, it's all about marginal gains. And then we figured out your marginal gains were bullshit because you were doping like excessively. That was for your marginal gains. But what I found with sport and with coaching the last 5 or 6 years is that people's endless pursuit of gadgets that are supposed to produce marginal gains actually end up causing diminishing returns. And that is something you see so much with running, in that, listen, any basic person with knowledge in coaching, or just run coaching, marathon, you need to run a lot. But yet running is in my opinion, the sport of the 3 disciplines we do in triathlon that people try to cut the most out of. And they do it the wrong way. They do it by minimizing how many times a week you need to run. I read this book where, 3 runs a week will get me to Boston. That might get 3 people to Boston out of like the 30,000. The rest of them run a shit ton, but that's not marketable. We need to be like, how to get to Boston, and how to run a sub 3 hour marathon on 3 runs a week. You scroll down this like asterisk, fine print. Must have 10 to 15 years experience running, accumulating 40 to 50 miles a week. You might be able to do that. The rest of it, what you need a lot of? Running. So what happens, you see a lot with very, very frequently with athletes, is that they'll run like twice during the week, Monday through Friday, and then they'll do an ungodly long run that's way out of the spectrum of their own development. And I'll go into more like the fine-tune aspects of off-season and how you should focus on running. But this is a percentage we gave a long, long time ago, a year or two ago, is that one of the best rules of thumb for your long run. And this is again, a concept most athletes have a very, very, very hard time wrapping their brain around. Still, the athletes that we work with have a very hard time wrapping our brain around. We had an athlete, Sean Sanford, did his first ever marathon coming off 70.3 training. I think his long run was like 16 miles, where he ran like over 9-minute pace. He churned out a sub 4 hour marathon on his first go, negative split it in 8:53, I think, minute miles.
Great job, buddy.
And he's like, all my friends think like, don't believe me. Like they just think they're ridiculous. I'm like, but what they don't see is like how often and how much you run and how much you've been doing that over a period of time. Is that you don't need 2 super short runs during the week and then 1 run. Because how you need to look at your long runs are, they should never be more than 30, max 35% of your weekly run volume. Most people, I would have to imagine it's 50 to 55% of their weekly volume is their long run. They go out and run for 2.5 hours using that formula. They'd be churning out 8.5 hour run weeks, 7.5. No, you're not doing that. Like, you're not running that much. So you basically beat yourself from the ground by running too long. And as we said before, just practicing being slow for longer periods of time and beating your body up in the meantime. Because the biggest thing about progression, and this is why this is the best time of year to go with it, is to commit to running right now. As you listen to this, it's a Thursday. Map out your plan for next Monday. A lot of our own athletes have already started this, especially if they have running is their weakness or something. And that's the other thing about running is it's the most demanding on your body of the 3 sports we do. It is, in my opinion, the only load-bearing one that we do. Swimming, you're in water. Cycling, no impact. Running, heavy, heavy, heavy impact, which also means you have to be the most careful with it because it is load-bearing. A lot of people don't have a lot of experience running. They might not have the greatest form. So you have to be very, very careful and calculated with getting them to run more. You can't just bridge up. And you see that so often with and I'm trying not to get sidetracked today with running, but it's chronic how many athletes overdo their long runs so quickly by doing an hour and a half 1 week. So 1 week they're doing an hour and a half. Their body wasn't ready for it. And then the next week they do an hour and 45. So you're telling me your body was already ready to go 15 minutes more on a long run, having only run twice a week, and the next week they're going to run 2 hours. So you're looking at like a 25% increase in 15 days if you bridge it out from a Sunday to a Sunday the next Sunday. Like that's how your body gets broken down and beat down, not how your body gets a physiological response and gives it enough time to adapt. Right now, commit to running 5 or 6 days next week. Go back and listen to one of our How to Not Suck at Running podcasts. Do the math yourself. We're not going to go through it today because we've already covered it. But this is the best time of year to run. For the next 4 to 5 months, right now is the best time to increase your run volume carefully. Get out there for, an extra 20 minutes on a day you wouldn't even, but what's 20 minutes? Well, if you do an extra 20 minutes twice a week, that's 40 times 4, looking at 160 extra minutes per month that you're getting in. It adds up. But the most important thing for people is if you can find time to make 20 and feel like 20 is worth it, in 3 weeks, you're going to find time for an extra 30. And then that'd be an extra 40. Before you know it, you're up to 40 miles a week and you become an amazing, aerobically efficient running machine that's insanely durable. But what happens to most people is they put running on the back burner this time of year, even though you just got done complaining for 4 months about the humidity and the heat. I can't wait for fall or winter. Oh, it's the off season. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit on the shelf. It is the best time of year to increase run volume and do it carefully, 5-6 days a week, all easy. Throw in like on 3 or 4 runs, throw a couple pickups in there, 4 30-second, efforts, something like that to keep your running economy nice and smooth. But now is the time, because what most people do is they wait till March, April, and they walk into the hottest part of the year that they just get done complaining about in their worst shape. And they're trying to chase their past paces in the worst possible conditions.
All right, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. That's right.
There's just...
I'm like a dog on the bone with this kind of stuff. Once you get me going, it's hard to stop.
I mean, there's just a lot there. I mean, I think that's what I mean. It's like, I feel like it's kind of simple, but it's hard to stay in that pattern. I mean, it's hard to run 5 or 6 days a week until you kind of get in a groove. And how do you get into that groove, and the habit of that and pulling back, it's like, that's been one of my things all along, is like, it's so difficult to walk away when you feel good, or like it's just like you think of running. Most people do, like outside of the sport, especially, they'll be like, how do you run that much? Or how do you do? Because they think it's hard and it beats you up and it hurts and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't have to. And I think what you're describing there is a way to, essentially, I mean, it's like really, you almost turned it into walking in a way, where it's just something that feels good and you're kind of at a pace you can control. It's not crushing you. You're not breathing super hard. It just feels good. And you don't push it over the top, every time you go out, or ever, really, for that matter right now, and it can feel good. It can feel like, and I used to, as I got more and more into running shape a few times during my career here in the last 10 years or whatever, I used to just be, so overjoyed by the ability to just go out and kind of cruise 7 or 8 miles and just get done and kind of forget about it. Normally back in the day, it would have been like, man, I just ran 5 or whatever, and I'd be limping or tired, or, you can feel it. But if you can get to the point where you can go out and like throw down an hour and come back and then just kind of go back to your projects without maybe with a clearer head and without.
Yeah, exactly. Feeling better and energized.
Yeah. I mean, at the heart of it, that's what I feel like you're saying.
Is 100% what I'm saying, and why it's so frustrating sometimes as a coach when you hear athletes bitch and moan all summer about it being too humid and the dew point's too high. It's just running feels so hard. Like, I just want it to feel easier. And then fall and winter comes, and you're like, all right, we're going to do a run block. I want to turn easy. But I hate running so easy. Like, why can't I run? I'm like, you just got done complaining about feeling too hard every time you went and ran. Now it's too easy. Make up your mind, right? But that's triathletes, right? So if you're wondering where to start, like you were saying, like, why do I even start with this? Like, I always tell people, start with the 20, 40, 60. 3 times a week, find time to run for 20 minutes. 2 times a week, find time to run for 40. And then your long run of the week needs to be 60. That's it. Okay? That is it. 3 20s, 2 40s, 1 60. Start out with a 20, 40, 60. That's 6 runs. You're like 3 20s. Like, that's really not that amount of time. Well, yeah, by the end of the week, you're going to have run for 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is probably a lot more than you probably already have been. Work your way up. Next week, 25, 45, 105, or 65 minutes, however you want to look at it. And then don't move up until, like you said, till you feel fresh, right? Till you feel good about it. Like, and that's one of those things where you can kind of test yourself, that I always like to do with athletes before you jump them up. Is one of the things we implement is like, all right, you're at an hour and a half, hour and 35-minute run, easy. We would like to, we think you're ready to bump up to 140, 145, but instead of jumping up the volume to where you can get in a little bit of trouble if they're not ready for it, is let's throw a little bit of intensity into the 130 to the hour and a half, maybe negative split, maybe a couple pickups. Because if you can handle an hour and 30 with some intensity, raising your the stress on your body, then you can handle it a super chill 145. But it's a great way to kind of test that out. But a lot of people, again, move up way too quickly because they're chasing longer runs, or they want to move up too fast. But like seriously, for 12 weeks, like I would argue till the cows come home, 90% of athletes doing Ironman distance never need to run over zone 3 because they don't have the running economy in the base to where it's going to even matter, right? Because 95% of you aren't going to be able to run the whole marathon. So what's your speed work going to do for you? It's like, I had this conversation with an athlete, like, after spectating Ironman Muncie. It's like, how many people you saw walking 10 miles in carbon super plated shoes?
Yeah.
Listen, if you can't run, this will be wildly unpopular, but if you can't run 24 or 23 to 24 miles of your marathon, then you're going to be slower in your super carbon shoes because they have so much less support and cushioning than a regular shoe. Your legs and your muscles are going to degrade and become so much more fatigued, and your running times going to slow and become so slow. You're going to walk sooner. No, but I got to get the carbon shoes, and they might make you faster for the first 13. They're going to be really uncomfortable to walk in for the next 13. And that's just one thing that, again, people have this, misunderstanding of what, I got to do, a ton of speed work. Baby, you ain't even got the engine to do some speed work. Like, you need to have a mass. Again, Ironman is aerobic. It is aerobic. And if you can't take the time to maximize that to get up to where you're doing 30, 35, 40 miles a week, then you have no business doing track workouts. You have zero business doing that to your body when you don't have, Joe Affiliate said the one thing, he was like, track work and stuff don't matter if you can't run the last 100 meters. He's like, because you have to be able to run the whole thing. He was talking about his ITU level athletes who do minimal track. They do a lot of tempo and a lot of hills. And we'll talk about hills here in a minute as a great way to focus in the off season. But he was like, how fast you are means nothing if you can't hold it and you can't be there the last 100 to make it matter. And so many, I saw it time and time again, athlete after athlete at Chattanooga. It was like, well, why don't we do more speed? Like, let's just focus on running for the duration before we worry so much about the other part. And it's just not as sexy, right? Like, but I'm durable, right? It's like, I'm a durable athlete. I'm a strong athlete. I might not be able to run a 5K as fast as you, but I'll outrun you in a full. Not because I'm faster, but because I'll last longer. And you might run fast for the first 16 or 17, but then you're going to start walking, and I'm going to run right past you through the last 5 because I'm a stronger, durable athlete. But that's not something that shows up on paper or on Instagram.
Man, you just hit on my thing. It's just been this frustration for years. Again, speed, like you said, speed work has its place if you can handle it. And I've been rarely in a place where I can handle it, but I usually, and I know we're going to talk about hills, but that's where I kind of usually focus my speed work effort and things like that. But this year I made a decision before that run. I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll go with the quote unquote faster, lighter shoe or whatever like that. And I was like, I ended up going with a Hoka because, and I'm not, suggesting Hokas are the way, because I think a lot of people have trouble with them. But for me, it kind of got me through plantar fasciitis, and they've just felt comfortable. But I knew in that second loop that I was just going to need, more cush. All I could think about was like, how can I alleviate some of the pain that I know is going to be coming because I've undertrained a little bit. And I just went with it. It didn't matter. It had nothing to do with how fast I could go. There was a couple of times when I was trying everything to get going on that second loop. You know how it goes. Like, okay, I'm going to walk 2 minutes now, and I'm going to maybe that'll recharge me. I'll do a double Coke bomb, and I'm like, whatever.
Double Coke bombs, right?
I feel like going, and then that didn't work or whatever. And then I was like, okay, maybe I just need to unleash a little bit. So I would take a 2 to 3 minute section, and I just kind of like go down into 8:30 pace or whatever. That's how. Because I really thought my run pace was going to be in the 13s or 14s, because that's just what it felt like out there, because I was walking on and off. But when I was running, I was actually trying to kick it in, and I was doing like, mid 8:30s or something for like 2 or 3 minutes a crack. My quote unquote speed was still there, but I just didn't have the muscular ability to hold any of that for very long, So that's my thing has always been, is like, I don't feel like I'm quote unquote losing a ton of speed in the overall scope of my life. And maybe I can't get that 6:30 on a sprint or whatever. I don't know, whatever it is. It's all kind of relative, but I still felt like I have the ability to go faster. I just don't have the strength. And like you're saying, that I haven't built it up enough to hold anything near that.
I'd say so many athletes spend a large part of their time in running trying to fit the engine of a dump truck into a Miata.
Yeah.
And and they wonder why it can't work, or it breaks down, or you can't make it work. It's so paramount to wrap your brain around the fact that in order to be fast and cover the distance, you need to cover the distance as fast as you can on race day. That means being durable enough. That doesn't mean you have to do it all at once, because that also is a recipe for disaster for most people. I need to run a marathon before I do. No, you don't. That's like I hate people run open marathons. I mean, I love them if they're doing them like at the right time, but most people do like, a month out. I think I'm going to do a marathon. No, you're not. Not under my watch. I'll switch you over to Coach Mike. He might put up with that, but I'm not putting up with it. But it's about frequency. And then it's about doing it. It's about running so frequently that you don't really wrap your brain around how much running you're actually doing, because it just fits into your normal schedule. Like I've got an athlete, successful, been to Kona, is doing Ironman California coming up, was on the podium earlier this year at Boulder. And I sent this athlete a text last Thursday and I said, hey, 20 miles in 24 hours. And just kind of like a smiley face, because I knew they probably didn't even look that and because I like to throw this in there as kind of like because it does, I think, sometimes worry athletes who haven't been through a specific cycle, but I'm not hitting that. And you're like, you ran 20 miles in 24 hours. And then I kind of followed up with, and just over 40 miles in 4 days, which is not even close to what a lot of athletes do an entire week. And so even if they did one run on the weekend that was 20, they're not going to run 10 miles 2 days in the middle of the week. And I was like, yeah, and last week our total mileage was at 45. And this athlete was like, believe it or not, I don't even look at that stuff anymore since you've been coaching me. I was like, good, that's my job. But it's like it's about the sum of its parts, not about a singular session, which is, again, what so many athletes forget is like your 5K time is it shows you how fast you are. Same thing with a 20-minute FTP test. But for long course racing, dude, if you don't have any hour and a half, 2-hour runs, good luck, right? Good luck holding that pace, which you could have. You might have the anaerobic ability and the short-term endurance to hold that form for 20 minutes, but it's a whole different ball game doing it for 26 miles and then also doing it after 112 in a 2.4 mile swim, which is the total. It's like, that's why you can't train running, and like for the people who do in long distance racing, like you can for open marathon stuff. It's still different. You're not doing it. You're doing it on a entire body already. Again, the 13.1 for most 70.3ers and the full for most Ironman athletes is never going to be about how fast you go, ever. It's going to be about how little you slow down. It's about preventing you from bleeding as much time as possible on the last 13, and then more specifically on the last 6. And where do you get that from? Not from the 4 800s you might do holding perfect form for about a minute and a half every other Tuesday and bashing your body so you can't get back and do another run the next day and the next day and the next day. It's about accumulated fatigue, and it's about doing things frequently, doing them more than you don't do them. Like, that was one of the very first lessons I ever learned 15 years ago. I was talking to another coach about running, and he said, running is the hardest one to improve because it's the one where people get the most injured from. It's the one where people's really poor technique can lead to injury, and it's load bearing. And so people run on sidewalks and concrete, and they're like, it's the one that has the biggest recipe for disaster and injury and stuff like that. And he said, in order to get better at anything in life, you have to do it more than you don't. And he said, so if you're only running 3 days a week, 4 days a week you aren't. How do you expect to really get better at something if you do it less than you don't? Mm-hmm. And that really, really stuck with me. And he also stuck with me about and we take this concept with our hill work, is that and this is a great time of year after you've gone through like 8 to 10, 12 weeks of really getting in consistent running, loving it to where you can do hill work and it's not going to smash you. That's like always the caveat. You can do it, but is it gonna shell you for a day or a week, or is it gonna leave you, where you're so sore tomorrow you can't move, or is it gonna, burn you out for, 4 or 5 days? Always ask yourself that question. Am I really ready for this? Am I feel good in the moment? But like you said, is it gonna, it's okay to kind of strike the match to see what might be there, but don't let it burn. And a lot of people choose to burn them, and hills are a place people try to burn them, but hills are a great, as long as they're not too steep, right? I tackled this 10%er today. I'm like, well, was stupid, because you're not even going to use the same run form. Like, your running economy changes, and you're putting so much stress on your calves and Achilles, you're probably going to be able to walk for 2 days. Pick a hill, 4 to 6, where you can still run fast. Do some hill repeats. You're not going to be able to go as fast because you're going up a hill, but the load and the impact on your body will be so much less that you'll be able to do more of them, and you won't feel so beat up the next day versus hopping on the sidewalk and doing, 1 mile repeats to your quad screaming you can't work out for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that whole thing about steep hills is the exact same thing. You're just not, you can't handle it because you're not, unless you got to build up to grade too. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. And like the thing about the grade too, is that like when the grade gets above like 6 to 7%, it becomes so steep that you can't continue to use the same running economy you would use in regular running, because you have to be on your toes so much because the incline is so steep that you can't take a regular stride. The point of doing hill repeats or doing hill work is to increase and get better at your running economy, which is doing the same run form pattern you would normally do, not to do a totally different one and be on your tiptoes and exploiting your calves. But it's to do about just enough to where it keeps you slow enough because you're going anaerobic so quickly that it's not going to absolutely smash your body. That's why hill work, again, is a really great thing. That's why a lot of the big name pro coaches, they rarely have their athletes do any threshold work on flats. They always make them do them on hills because it's kind of a safeguard, because you get anaerobic so quick because of the incline that they're not able to overrun maybe and kind of go into that. Again, going back to the running is the one that causes the most injuries for people. It's like you want to kind of hedge your bet a little bit. And that's a big thing with running, especially, is like I can't urge you enough to, like, there's no such thing as running too easy. Like, there really, really isn't. Like, and we get this a lot with athletes who are working. They're like, I never knew I actually liked running. Like, it's way more fun to get done with the run and feeling energized and like refreshed versus feeling just absolutely destroyed. Because you look back and they're running for 30 minutes as fast as they can at 170, heart rate and 180. You're like, no wonder you hate running, because it sucks every time you do it, because you're running like a 5K all out time trial and you're probably not getting any better results because all you're doing is like, expanding and exploding the fitness you have right there, and only to try and let your body recover to do the next one. It's not about adapting. It's about recovering from the trauma you did to your body. But that's the other thing. It's like, running easy and slow and logging miles to me is a lot like swimming with a pool buoy. When you talk about swimming, it's like, if it makes you go to the pool more because it makes swimming more fun and easier, then you're going to swim more. And if you swim more, you're going to get better at swimming. And if you get better at swimming, you're going to like swimming. So you're going to go back more. So you're going to get better. Same thing with running. If you can get people to run easy enough to where it makes sense they can run more, they're going to get better. And once they see themselves getting better, what do you know? You like running more. Yeah. It's just, it's one of those things where, but again, we live in a socially marketed world where, a lot of people choose to, submit themselves to being graded or liked or hearted by every single session that they do. So they have to try and keep up with the Joneses or what. Like, listen, dude, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I ran what for me is an out of shape 5K, and I was in the high sixes, I think, for my average pace. My easy runs are in like the 9s, like mid to high 9s. And I've had a couple athletes be like, yeah, I really like it that you run there. I'm like, why? Why do you like it that I run on the 9s? And they're like, well, because you practice what you preach, because you run slow and you're supposed to run slow. And I guess, for coaches, they might be worried about people seeing like, oh, you're running in the 9s. You might not know what you're talking about. No, I know what I'm talking about. So I run in the 9s, because I know what gets you to where. Also, maybe we'll post this, but I wrote one of our very first blog posts we wrote on running. When I did back when I was living in Kansas City, and I wrote about how to not suck at running. It was run slow to get faster. And I documented with all the data how slow I ran for like 12 plus weeks. and how much I dropped not just my 5K time from running slow with no hard efforts, but also dropped my heart rate. And a few weeks later, I think I ran my fastest 5K ever at the Super Bowl 5K down at the Kansas City Chiefs Stadium. I lived in Kansas City. I ran my first ever sub 6 minute pace 5K.
Congrats, man. I don't remember that.
It was like 6 years ago.
You kept that under the radar. That must not have been on.
We weren't really
Strava
a big deal then. Yeah, I think that was actually pre-podcast.
I think what the thing about, everybody talks about, burning fat and teaching your body to burn and that's slow running. But like what I had a thought of is like, think about this over the next 6 months or whatever, and how many times I have overrun or whatever and underfueled, and you get back and you look in the mirror and you got more gray hairs than you had when you started. Like I feel like that's a thing really, where maybe it's just in your eyes or something, you're noticing more, whatever it is, but you feel a little bit shelled or a lot shelled. And the thing about going slower is if you get done and you do this for several months, you can make mistakes on, it's easier with the nutrition side of things too. You know what I mean? So like you're not, under the pressure to really nail fueling or whatever. You get used to, fat burning and adapting to that as a slower runner. I think that's all part of it, right? It's just like you're teaching your body to actually burn the fat and get used to having more energy that way.
Be aerobically
instead of
efficient.
like pouring down sugar all the time just to run, maybe 30 seconds or a minute faster per mile. And over the long haul, that's got to be good for you.
You're going to run for hours. Like no matter what, you're going to run for hours and hours after you've already been exercising for hours and hours and hours. It is an aerobic event. Like everything we do is an aerobic event. And so to just disregard or try and hack your way through cheating away, or I've got the cheat code for getting faster and only 2, but no, you don't. You're full of shit. Okay. That's just marketing BS for everyone who looks for a shortcut, when that's a shortcut. You know what it's a shortcut to? A dead end. Okay. It might look good for a minute, but it's a shortcut to a dead end. And if you really want to get better, it's going to take time, effort, and consistency. And it's the most present in running because it takes you the longest to do, because you have to, at least for the way that we do it, you have to be the safest with it, because it's where the most stress fractures and broken this and torn this comes up is in running. That's why you have to be so incredibly careful. Like, hell, I tell you, I'll challenge you, go out and run a 5K and see what your time is. Then for the next 16 weeks, don't do any hard running at all zone 2. But if you commit to running 5 or 6 days a week and only keep your intensity to in the pool and on the bike, guarantee you're going to be faster. 100%. Guarantee. But most people don't want to do that because they're like, I want it right now. I want to do what I do, or I want to do something today that at least shows me or allows me to feel like I'm getting faster. But being fit is relative to the event that you're doing. Feeling really fit means, how did I feel the next morning? Not what max pace did I hit in my last 15 seconds, my all out 200 on Wednesday. It was, did I wake up Wednesday morning and do a double run, on a Wednesday, and I got 16 miles and woke up the next day, right back on the bike, baby. That's being fit for long distance racing. That's being durable. That is fitness. It's not expressed in your 30-second peak power, your 30-second, part of your fastest mile. Like, that was just but a glimpse, right? That's it. It's about how things are accumulated, and that's never more present in running. And that's just something I really, really encourage everyone to run zone 1, zone 2 for an accumulate mile. That's a great time of year to do it. And also, going back to the cast video earlier this week, when we're talking about getting out and mountain biking, is find yourself on the trails. Mm-hmm. Work the agility part of that you probably never work anymore. Like I'm the same way. I'm a north-south guy right now. Like I don't do much east and west, but I will try and hit the trails once a week when I'm in a run focus, because it takes me out of my head, because I have to pay attention, but it's just good. It's good for ankle stability. It's good to use like your stabilizer muscles. And I think it makes you an all around better runner. It makes you, it makes your feet stronger. You just have to think more. You have to land. It's very much like mountain biking. I think everyone should get out there and do it. Do the strength work. And then obviously the biggest thing, disregard pace. Just disregard pace, go by feel. If you have to hike up a hill, then hike up it, but keep it chill, keep it relaxed. It's easy on the body. It's great for you, and it will result in a better running for 2022.
Yeah, and just a quick thought. I've always felt like just running slower makes you stronger. I mean, because your muscles are on the ground longer. You know what I mean? Like if you're running fast, you're lifting up, you're picking up. You're not really. You're kind of. It's like I always talk about how I'm burning that top end fuel or that jet fuel at the top versus like having that sustained kind of whole feeling about like I feel steady and sturdy right now. And I think just slowing down just overall lets your muscles build up in the proper way, maybe, you know, because that's what, if we try to go too fast, it's like some of these muscles like, hey, wait, I haven't really done anything since we were in grade school. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we're just busting it out. And that muscle's been kind of like sleeping for about 30 years.
You hear that with athletes all the time. And they're like, I want you to do this run as slow as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, it hurts worse to run slow.
Exactly.
And then you know what I tell them is, what kind of form you think you're going to have at mile 22, baby? You know, and you're like, that's the form you're going to have, like at mile, maybe even earlier. And to have that form for the first time, you're just going to break down easier. You don't want to practice poor form, but you want to practice what's the reality, right? The reality is you're going to look more like that running zone 1, zone 2 kind of slow stride and run form. You're 95% of you, 99% of you are going to look like that at mile 20 or before. You're not going to look like you do when you run a 200 on the track on fresh legs. Like that's just not the same. Yet more people want to spend more time doing that.
But there still is this thing with that deadlift analogy I had that, you know, you can run slow at good form is really hard.
Yes.
So practice it. You know
Definitely
what I mean?
Practice your good form. Don't be lazy.
Yeah. Don't be lazy. Don't like whatever. But, you know, that's what I'm saying is that form at a really, really slow pace is how you perfect it and own it at that pace. And then you kind of build that up. And if you get your form, swimming, whatever, if you can handle form at a really slow effort, you understand it. So you know how to implement it. And your body's like, I get this. Let's go a little faster, whatever. That should wrap it up. You know, back to your Seinfeld reference. I've always wanted to call a podcast the podcast about nothing.
This wasn't that one.
This is not it. I can't do it.
Maybe next one. Yeah, 3 focus cast. There you go.
There's your info.
Hope you enjoy it. We'll enjoy our next week off. We've enjoyed you tuning in. Hope you had some good things to say and you got something positive from the podcast we did today. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's the one-stop shop we have for all things coaching, camps, and community. It also has all of our gear up there now, as we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. That's your best way to support us. Grab a water bottle, grab a visor, grab a hat, long sleeve tee, short sleeve tee, hoodie, you name it. Just support us, you know, or like the kids say, rep us, baby, rep us. I don't even know what the kids say. That my kid's 5. He definitely doesn't say rep us. Go with that. And you can also, if you're looking for coaching, check out our coaches tab and peruse through the ones we have that have spots available. Check them out. Reach out to us if you have any questions. We'll be launching our club membership. That has been. We've had a lot of athletes ask about that. We'll be launching that on November 1st.
Yep,
November 1st. So we'll be doing that. We'll enroll in that. It's a very popular program. It's honestly one of the best things we've probably done. It's great for every kind of athlete. It's seen all kinds of success, and it's a great starter place too. So be on the lookout for that. More info, and you can check out what we have right now on that on the website too. If you have any questions or anything for Mike, he is always available at crushingiron@gmail.com. Or if you need anything from me specifically, you can always get a hold of me, c26coach@gmail.com.
Rep our bling, man.
And follow us on the socials, c26_triathlon.
All right, buddy. I'll see you later, man.